of life has slowed down so much with her husband that she's almost not having sex with him at all. But she knows she can't walk out of the house with condoms. He'd never understand. So when she hooks up with some player, the very least, they're going to have oral sex and anal sex, but he won't count because they didn't have vaginal sex. See that smile on your face? I think I understand it. You know what I'm talking about. Go ahead.
So, I just want to see if I get this. Our mission, or my mission, should I choose to accept it?
Be careful, because this whole room will explode in 5 seconds.
Is the sexual liberation of women.
Not just. It's also the sexual liberation of men. Do you understand?
I'm game.
That sounds good. Congratulations. Welcome. Are you in season? Because there are hunters outside looking for you. What is it that we have that we can offer to women? A good time without damaging their security, without making them feel dirty, on an ongoing, repeating basis from someone who's interested in learning about them, who treats them as a free-willed, free-thinking individual. You have a problem with this, young lady? I didn't think so.
I want to hear this.
Oh, no, she's smiling because she's thinking how wonderful what I'm offering is. Am I right? Am I
I want to
right?
hear this.
We'll take it as
Well, to back it up, you said to not make her feel dirty sometimes.
Different story. That's fine. That's fine. Sometimes a girl wants to be called a dirty slut, but she doesn't want to feel like it after the fact.
No, right, when you're done, you're done.
Absolutely.
Game's over.
That's fine. If some girl wants to call me her love rhino, that's fine. But when we're done, yeah, that hasn't happened in a long time.
You were saying before that this is what 12% of the population. The children aren't the father or aren't children of their daddy.
That's the stat in North America.
Yeah.
That's actually call it Anglo North America, not Mexico.
What I'm getting at is that, do you believe that the only reason why this is more prevalent, that this is a small subset, is because there isn't enough worthy players around?
No, I'll take it differently. I think the reason that that's not a higher number is because a lot of women are on the pill.
So you believe that it would be much more prevalent, or it is prevalent?
I would say the number of events is much higher, but the number of conceptions is not.
So you don't believe that this is a subset, a small, a small exception to the rule of normal society? This is what's going on in society, but it's underground?
I believe that is true. I'll tell you why. I call myself the man who didn't count. I stopped counting at a very high number, and I've gone over that number a couple of times. And that number has 3 zeros after it and is much larger than 1 or 2. Okay? For number of partners. I've been a busy boy for a lot of years. It's pretty much all I've done with my free time. This, guys, if I think about it, I could be embarrassed by the number of people I've been to bed with. But the truth of the matter is, I know that overwhelmingly they're very happy about it. It's been good for most of them. It's been very good for a lot of them. The ones who are in committed long-term relationships, they don't usually meet the girls who are happily not in committed long-term relationships. But the ones who are not in committed long-term relationships surely meet each other. This brings me to something I have found to be incredibly useful for myself over the last dozen years or so, and certainly the last 8 years since the last time I made a stupid mistake and agreed to spend a whole year being exclusive to one woman, and I did it. And all my friends said, "Johnny, what's wrong with you? You're wilting." And my sex life went from a couple of times a day with a couple of different people to a couple of times a month with one person. And nobody else. And it was bad for us both. At the end of the year, she said, "Go fuck other people. I can't live with so little sex." That was a very bad time for me. Now I can tell you, you can't go, all the plants will die. But I've got the Mazzola and the Crisco board and the Twister board. We were ready for after the... Oh, all right. Come with me, kids.
Sorry.
I think someone's battery has died on this recorder. I have 2 rules, which I use uniformly across the board with every girl that I bring into my life in a significant way. These 2 rules have worked very, very, very well for me. Rule number 1 is I will not be any girl's only male lover. Period. The girl says to me, "But you're the only one I want." I don't care. Girl needs to have other things to do and other people to do when I'm not with her. Because I guarantee you, when I'm not with her, I'm with somebody else. And she's got to understand this, and she's got to know this, and she's got to be comfortable with it. Because I'm not going to pretend that I'm not with other people. I'm not going to be dishonest about any of it. So, she needs to find other people to entertain her. Not only that, it keeps me on my toes. I always have to make sure I've never hardly taken her for granted or being too routine. Maybe she'll learn something new from some other guy that she really likes. And I'd better get good at that too. Maybe she'll have a half a dozen lovers other than me. Maybe she'll get engaged to one of them. That's great. Doesn't bother me. Now, right now, I have a principal lover who makes me incredibly happy. And all of you are welcome to hit on her, but I don't know if you're going to have any luck. I don't experience any sort of jealousy at all. I just don't. I got past it a long, long, long time ago when I realized that it was all about not liking me very much. The truth of the matter is I really, really love my girlfriends, and I want them to have the best time they can, whether they're with me or not. And what ends up happening is, rule number 1, make sure that I never get too comfortable and forget that I need to treat them as sexual creatures, and care for them and cherish them. And it also keeps them from ever thinking that when they're not with me, maybe I won't be with someone else. They understand that our relationship is not exclusive. The second, it also means, by the way, that they all know that I'll be really mad at them if they don't have condoms with them. Because when they meet that player who's going to hit them up at just the right time, they better not bring back any souvenirs. Second rule is every woman in my life has to do her best to get along with my other girlfriends. Her best. And she has to mean it. This means no cattiness, no infighting, except a couple days a month during their PMS. They have to understand and look for the things that I love about the other girls. 'Cause it's not that they're hot or that they're easy. It's that I really like them as people. Because ultimately, that's the relationship I have. Guys, if I were into guys, I'd be fucking all my friends. Tragically or fortunately, I'm not sure. And so, my girlfriends are my friends, who are girls. And Violet, who I am desperately in love with and for whom I would kill or die, is my friend. And we were friends for a year before we started sleeping together. And we're still friends. It's a pretty good deal. And she's my friend who helps me pick up other girls. She's my friend who orchestrated a Christmas present for me with 5 other girls to give me a simultaneous blowjob, which is a pretty great gift. Unfortunately, I had a cold sore at the time, so I had to cancel it, postpone it anyway. But it was wonderful that she could throw that together for me in such short time. Now, I live what might seem an unrealistic or bullshit life part of the reason I have, amongst other things, some beautiful girlfriends who really care about me around is so that you know, I'm not full of shit, guys. This is exactly what I do. Everything I'm telling you is completely the straight dope. You guys are good. I like that. Laugh it up. Hey, go on. Do you have some critical comment? All right. Totally unrelated. Good thing. What a spanking you get. A squirrel. ADD doesn't just affect boys. Anyway, talk about timing. Now, like I'm saying, what I'm saying to you guys is exactly the way I see it, the way I believe it, and the truth. I tell the girls exactly what's on my mind. I'll tell you. Girls invite you to audition for them, but you never think about it that way. It works like this. You meet some girl, she's at a bar, she's dressed to the nines, she's feeling really good about herself. She's not there to go home with you. She's there to get a lot of guys to hit on her. Buy her drinks, make her feel good about herself. Maybe she's not feeling actualized because she's a failed model who works as a dental hygienist. But you know she's got the looks, and she's got a comp card, you know, a Z card, modeling portfolio card. So she calls herself a model, and you're all excited by her. And she's pretty, and she's made herself up. And she wants the ego massage of your attention and every other guy in the place. And you go up and you talk and you run your game on her, and maybe she'll give you her number, which really means, all right, on my list of things I want from a guy on long term, he has not yet shown me anything I don't want. Because usually, you see, if she's found something, she'll go home, she'll say to her friend she hasn't had sex in 6 months, they'll say, what happened to that nice guy you were with last night? She'll say, I could never go to bed with a guy who had a soul patch. How long does it take to shave off a soul patch? You know? I could never go to bed with someone who wore brown shoes with a black suit or whatever. But it's all just excuses for herself. Ultimately, if she was at the time into him, none of that would have mattered. But for whatever reason, she gives him her number, he calls her up because a couple of days have gone by and he's had the cojones to phone her up. And she goes, okay, I'll let this guy audition. She doesn't say it that way. She says, sure, I'll go out with you for dinner. So the guy auditions. He spent a lot of time preparing himself for this. He goes out and he performs. He tries his best to be the man he believes she wants. He spent a lot of money on her in time and energy. And at the end of it, if she wasn't impressed by the audition, she says, let's just be friends. Or if the audition wasn't bad, or because she liked the restaurant, or because she felt, you know what, it wasn't terrible, I'll give him another try. She lets him come on for a second audition. This time, if he does well enough during the early part of the audition, she'll audition him for kissing and making out. Because girls love kissing and making out. It's very sensual and emotional and connected. And so you go there and you take the girl out and you pretend to be someone you believe she wants. And she lets you. And you make out with her. But she's not going to let you go home with her and have sex because she knows that there's a routine, a script she has to follow. Otherwise, you won't have respect for her, and she'll feel like she's giving it away for too little. She won't have respect for herself. So you end up going home at the end of the second date, you jerk off, you feel real good because you're making out and you're all turned on. And hell, jerking off is probably better than actually sex would have been. And you make a date for number 3, and you know this is the important one because she's already written out the contract. And if things go well on date 3, she's going to audition you, and you're going to make the pilot episode. Off you go, and you do a good job pretending to be the person you think she wants again. And she's also on her best behavior. And then you go to bed with her, and the transaction's done, you put your name on the paper, you've made the pilot, and you go, you know, that wasn't really worth it, was it? And now she panics, because, oh my God, she's already invested in this. She shot the pilot. She wrote about you in her diary. She told her friends about you. Now her reputation will be sullied if you don't stick around. So she panics. So she clings to you a little bit, because if you can get you to go to bed with her 3 or 4 times, you'll forget there are other women out there. Now, this isn't going to happen to you guys, but this is what happens to AFCs all around the world. They go to bed with a girl, they go to bed with a girl another time, they go to bed with a girl another time. Now they're seeing each other. They have the talk. I don't want to see anybody else. I don't want you to see anybody else. And guys say, okay. This is a model that is fundamentally and ultimately a loser for any man who gets trapped in it. This is a very negative frame for men. Not only is it a negative frame for men, it's a terrible frame for women. And you can explain this to them. There is no such thing as a Harlequin romance story in which you open it up and you read about the girl who fantasizes about meeting some guy, giving her his number, giving her number, getting a phone call from him, probably later, going out for a nice date, giving him a kiss on the cheek, waiting a few more days, going out for a second date, making out with him, going out for a third date, going to bed with him. No. There's no one who fantasizes about that. That's not romance. That's not sex. Sex, romance, interesting. You meet some guy, he sweeps you off your feet, you go to bed with him immediately. Or you meet some guy, he's totally cool and interesting, and then he has to go, and you wanted more, and then he shows up, sweeps you off your feet, and you go to bed with him. That's interesting. But this rigmarole of pretending to be something you aren't is not sexy. It's bondage, and not in a sexual sense. It's where you say, I'm going to play the game your way. I'm going to be your boyfriend. I'm going to wear that title. I'm not just going to play the role. You're going to be able to advertise me as your boyfriend. You're going to get great pride. You're going to be able to tell people you have high status because you are now a contract whore. Someone is being prepared to put his name on you in some way in exchange for your promise of exclusive sexuality. Now, the thing about girls is, they all know that if they have too many guys that they've had contract whore relationships with, they look like a slut. They don't want this. So, as they go through life, it gets harder and harder and harder to get them to make these contract relationships. But you don't necessarily have to, because all you have to do is be outside their realm, someone who didn't count, and then you can have sex with them for fun, without worrying them, because they're not going to count you. No one's going to know about you in any significant way. Doesn't matter. They'll tell their girlfriends about you, and you just won't count. Not only that, they'll introduce you to their girlfriends with a great review, and you'll start sleeping with them. Go ahead. Absolutely. Of course. Absolutely. You can always do anything that works for you. If you can manage to find someone that you're crazy about and is crazy about you, who will marry you and be exclusive to you and expect you to be exclusive to her, and you can enjoy it and you're happy, more power to you. Oh, married and have an open? Absolutely.
Why would you though?
Well, you see, this is the thing. Marriage exists. Marriage is a neat thing. Marriage exists because if it didn't exist, there would be no way for a man to demonstrate he owned a woman, and there would be no way for a woman to demonstrate that she was high enough status to have made this deal. Very important.
Tax credit.
Pardon me?
Just a tax credit.
Yeah, and of course, and the tax credit. But really, marriage is also supposed to be a guarantee for children that their parents are both going to be there to kick in and make sure the kids are taken care of. The problem is, in the last 50, 70 years, marriage is no longer a lifetime commitment out of which it is almost impossible to escape. People do abandon their children or their families. People do break up. They become serial monogamists, one after another, after another, after another, as opposed to a parallel polygamist like myself. And the reason for this is because they want to be able to have children, and they want their children to have parents, and they want this deal to continue. And if the parents have an open relationship and can do what they want, the chances of the children's having parents who are together for a long time is much higher, in my experience. That said, it doesn't guarantee anything. Openness doesn't guarantee a relationship stays together. In fact, what it almost guarantees is that when a relationship can't stay together, the parents will split up. And what this actually does is it gives the best thing to the kids. Because the best thing you can provide to your children is a happy home life. And the next best thing you can provide to your children is no exposure to an unhappy home life. Okay? My parents couldn't stand each other. They had an open relationship. I had a lot of uncles and aunts who were sleeping with my parents. I had almost no relationship with my parents for a while I was a child. But I did get along very well with some of these uncles and aunts. Now the end result is, my parents tried to be open but weren't. It was false. It was just that they screwed around on each other all the time and knew about it. They didn't really communicate very well. A good communication allows people, when they've realized that they've run their course, to separate in a mature and usually friendly way. I often say I just about don't have any exes at all. Just girlfriends in remission. Sometimes they'll go into remission because they've met some other guy who offered them something they thought they wanted, an exclusive relationship. He would say, I'm jealous of other people being with you. I can't stand it. They go, oh wow, that's so cool. I could never get that from Johnny. And while I was flavor of the month at the beginning, then new girls came along, I got de-emphasized. And I needed that sensation that I was really important, aside from just being his friend, because I knew that was never going to change. I needed to feel special. And so they'll leave and they'll get angry and they'll go off with someone who wants them to be exclusive. And sometimes it'll last a month, and sometimes it'll last 6 months, and sometimes it'll last 5 years. Sometimes it'll last longer. Some of them haven't even finished. I accept it. Sometimes the girls get pretty nasty to me for a little while, and I say, hey, I was always straight with you. You knew exactly what it was about from the beginning. I'll always be your friend. My door is always open. Sometimes they show up in the middle of the night and they climb into bed with me, and whoever else is in the bed. And they're welcome. And I tell them 20 times during the course of the relationship that if this ever happens, remember, I'm not going to be angry with them for leaving. They have to follow their happiness. And if it turns out that I keep the penis in happiness, they can come back. Because I'll be there. And I won't be mad at them. I appreciate it if they didn't slander me too badly when they left. And this has worked very well for me. Now I'll come back for a moment and tell you something about that whole dating paradigm where you end up in the situation where you agree to go in for several auditions. I have a really simple system. I don't take numbers from girls unless I'm going to call them right away. For one thing, taking a number from a girl you don't call is the same thing as rejecting her after the fact. It cuts down on her wanting to give her number to the next guy. Because if she actually gave you her number and wanted you to call and you don't, and she sat around and waited it all, she's hurt. Okay? So in a catch and release way, you don't want to damage the pool. So I'll give them my email address. This is something you can do recently. Give me your email address. I have a bunch of domain names of my own, johnnysoporno.com, worthyplayboy.com. They lead to my own propaganda pages. They lead to my MySpace. Perfect. Congratulations. Thank you for coming in. This man came in from San Diego to be here. And so they go and they read about me, and they read about me, and they see me with dozens of my girlfriends. And if they bother to follow up, it's because they're pre-approved. They already know what they're getting into. And if they don't follow up, hey, no big deal. The only way I would have been able to make anything happen with them would have been to fake it, which I won't do. They're going to take me or leave me. It's Hobson's choice. Take it or leave it. Truth is, like I said, I'm disarming. I'm interesting. I'm interested. I treat them with respect. I give them reasons to understand why I'll treat them with respect, even though, to their mind, what they're doing with me is being a slut. I help them get over this. And they choose to go to bed with me because they can tell I have the confidence of a man who can deliver the goods. They also know that I've got a lot of other girlfriends. They know that I'm not going to ask them to stop searching for Mr. Right. Hell, I'm going to help them look for Mr. Right. I'm just Mr. Right now, and I may not be Mr. Right now for you for very long. And they come on board, and they're happy to. And they all know about each other, and they usually meet one another, and they usually go to bed with me in groups.
Oh.
And I love my lifestyle, and I deserve it. And there isn't any one of them who thinks, wow, Johnny sure has it too good. No. They go, why can't other guys be like Johnny? Do you understand? And if you ask them, how come you can have this sort of relationship with Johnny, but you can't have this sort of relationship with me? They'll say, you're not Johnny. But you know what? I'm not that special, guys. I'm just very straightforward about things, and I understand ways to let women know that I'm going to accept them. I'm not going to be judgmental against them. I'm not going to treat them badly. I'm not going to invite them to feel badly about themselves. I'm going to invite them to love themselves and cherish themselves and be good to themselves. And I'm going to make them come like they never have before, and I'm going to decorate their face with my load. All these things I let them know. And then I do my very best to make sure that they're all true. And I have a pretty damn high satisfaction rate for both sides. But when I meet a girl online or wherever, I flirt with a girl, someone introduces me to a girl, I say, hey, let's go out someplace. I know a place, and I tell them a place I want to take them. And I say, I'd love to get you out, but I have to warn you, I don't kiss on the first date. And then I say, when they giggle, and they say, well, that's okay. I say, actually, it's important you know, dates are never longer than 30 minutes. And they say, what? Oh, yes, I remember. And I say, actually, why would we want to force each other to make nice all night? We're going to know in the first 15 minutes if we've got chemistry. We're going to know if there's attraction almost immediately. If it isn't going to happen, we may as well cut and run. Respectfully, you know, maybe we'll try another time. But we'll recognize it's not going to happen tonight, and we'll move on. The girls go, okay, that makes sense. And I say, besides, if we're getting along well enough, we can cut the first date early. What do you mean? Well, let's say it's 20 minutes in, we're having a really good time, so we'll cut the first date and move right into the second date when the kissing can begin.
Like that one.
Sometimes I don't even go to bed with them till the third or fourth date. But it's always the first night. And I never have one night stands, but I virtually always have first night stands. Do you follow what I'm saying, guys? I can't be bothered to go to bed with someone only once. The only time it ever happens is because I'm about to leave town. And then I stay in touch with them online. In fact, the last girl I had a one night or first night stand with is going to Vegas from Amsterdam next week. And Violet, a much Violet girlfriend. The truth of the matter is, anyone that I think is quality enough that I'm going to spend my evening with, at this point in my life, I'll say I've got reasonably high standards. No, I'll say I've got really high standards. They need to be able to be interesting to me. Here's a thing for you guys to think about. You guys walk up to girls, I don't know where you are in the game, but I'll tell you, I walk up to a girl wherever she is, I start talking with her, and the only thing that's going through my mind is, in 5 minutes, am I still going to be interested in talking to this girl? If in 5 minutes I'm still interested in talking to her, I'll take her home. But it's not that often. But if at the end of 5 minutes I'm interested, she's pretty much coming home. It's because, for whatever reason that I've been able to stay interested in her, she's become really into me. Partly because I've gotten her to tell me all sorts of things about herself, and the things she's interested in, and the things that matter to her, in ways that make her feel respected and appreciated. Nothing makes a man more attractive than being interested in the girl. You'll find this again and again. Everyone wants to feel powerful. Everyone wants to feel approved of, everyone wants to feel secure. Sometimes you have to get people to override those feelings, to go for things that are still better. Sometimes you have to sacrifice security for freedom. Sacrifice approval for something more important. In the Inner Game post that I imagine most of you have read, I made a comment about if you allow yourself to stop progressing, because to do so will involve having someone you don't admire disapprove of you, then you're insane. When you figure out that something you want, you have to do something that is not usual, and most people are going to look down their nose at you for doing it. And you know it makes sense to you. You know it's going to work, or you believe it will. But you won't do it because you don't want to take the chance of having other people look down their nose at you. You're an idiot. Because those people who look down their nose at you, after you do it and you succeed, they'll all be going, oh, I knew him when. They'll all become immediate admirers once you prove your case. So whatever it is that you feel like doing, whether it's like I do, wearing bright red devil's horns with a piercing through one of them, while I go to business meetings or trade shows or pick up girls. Go ahead.
I was going to say in your comment, I think probably a lot of this stuff before that society has that. How do you get past that?
You must emancipate yourself. You must grab a hold of yourself and say, if this makes sense to me in my brain, I think about it, whatever it is I want to do, I like it, it makes sense, I can see how it's going to play out, and I'm good with it. You run it past your emotional sense. And believe in your emotional sense, guys. Guys, we've only had language for about 10,000 years. We've only had logic for less than 1,500. But we've had emotional instincts for about 3 million years, and they've gotten us to here. So they're pretty good, and you should pay attention to them.
What if that casting that approval away comes with a really high cost, like, losing your family?
You have to make these decisions for yourself. If you are in a situation, I'll be frank, if you find yourself in a situation where doing something that you know is right for you, that you feel emotionally comforted by, you feel ethically comfortable with, your conscience is not going that you shouldn't do it, you're going, you know what? These other people telling me not to do this are wrong. And you're sure. Follow your brain. Do that thing if the cost is lower than the cost of not doing it. At the end of the day, once you've done it, those people who will threaten that they'll disown you or not be involved with you, if they're anchors to your unhappiness, if they're preventing you from getting to your happiness, they're no friends.
What if it's gray though?
Gray?
What if it's both good and bad?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Like, what decision you make is good for you in one sense, but in another sense you're emotional about it in another sense, and it's bad for you, you don't want to lose that, then you want that.
Don't make any
at the
decision.
expense of the other.
Don't make any decision until you know that you've got quorum, that your brain says yes, and your emotional reasoning, and that's what it is, guys, it's reasoning, says yes. When they both say yes, just try and stop yourself. You'll become more and more miserable with every day. Do the things you know you have to do. It sucks when people are standing in your way. Okay? People you care about are standing in your way, trying to defend you from something they feel is a great badness. But you know what you have to do. Well, the longer you sacrifice yourself, the worse you're going to feel about yourself. Until you become a very small and angry and hostile person.
What you're saying is bad courage.
Yes, find your feet. Okay? I say this all the time. Guys, all of you, please listen. If you find that you're miserable in some part of your life, but you're dealing with it through smoking dope, or going out sarging, or fucking a bunch of people who make you feel good about yourself because they're hot and other people think you're okay because of it, or watching TV, or drinking to excess, or playing online, or playing computer games, or anything that falls in the category of escapism. When you reach the point where you're spending a significant part of your life in escapism, abandon it. Fuck escapism. Embrace escape. Find your feet and walk out of your situation. Because it's fucked. Remember that thing I was telling you about? That most valuable thing you're ever going to have? That's your time, guys. The time to make a move away from misery and towards what you hope will be happiness. What you hope, not wish. There's a big difference in wishing for something and hoping for it. Wishing is when, oh, it would be nice. Hoping is where you're doing something where there's a reasonable expectation of success. When you take those steps towards what you hope will bring you happiness, or what you reason will bring you happiness, do it with great enthusiasm and do the best job you can. Get to that happiness as quickly as you can. And recognize that what you're jettisoning behind you, you won't miss. Even in nostalgia, you'd be amazed how many people never miss the former Soviet Union once they defected. People who didn't defect and stayed there, and then it fell apart around them, miss it, because they still believed in what it claimed to have been, even if they couldn't see it, even if it wasn't that way for them. They wanted it to have been, and so now they complain because they're not getting it more now than they weren't getting it before. You follow? So I'm sorry to say that if your situation is such that your culture, your family, your predilections say you should not do something, but you know you should, do it. You haven't got any choice. You honestly haven't got any choice. You can try not to, and it's going to rot you away until there's nothing left. Follow your happiness. Guys, if there's one thing I want to get across to you all, most important thing, is that the whole purpose to being alive, the only thing that matters at the end of the day, is if you're happy. If you die happy, you win. If you die pensive and neurotic and worried, you lose. You're going to die one way or the other, guys. Try and make sure you win. Be happy as often as you can. And be happy for the right reason. Be happy because you're doing the things that make you feel good about yourself. Do good things for other people. They'll do good things for you. Like I said, put rabbits in the hats. Whenever you can do something nice for somebody, do it. And then when the time comes you need to pull a rabbit out of the hat, you'd be amazed how easy it is to find those rabbits. They're there. People remember, and they really like to do things back for people who are nice. Matter of fact, like I said, that favor bank doesn't have account balances. People can just tell that you're the sort of guy who has the confidence to ask them for something. And they know, intuitively, they can sense. If they do something good for you, it's going to come back to them. And of course, you're the sort of person who's going to make sure it does. And this self-perpetuates. Life works really well for people who make that conceptual leap. The game is as good as you make it. The more you invest in your life, into making yourself feel good about yourself, the better your life is. And it's cheap. It's really inexpensive. It takes almost no time at all. Look for people who you could help and help them. It doesn't take long at all. I think I'm getting a notice from someone that their bladder needs to expand. I'm going to, because it's 10:30, I'm going to say let's have a bio break. I actually have probably 10 more hours of ranting I could do, but I think for the time being I'm going to take a break and see if there's more questions. Who wants to go to the can? And then we'll see whether there's something to pick up with. Maybe I'll even find a place to sit. It's very good. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you who seem to have enough confidence. I'm going to say something worth hearing that you stayed. I'm having a great time talking to you guys. I'm hoping that any question that you come up with, you'll bring to my attention because of two things. First of all, don't worry for even a moment about other people's looking down at you for asking the question. The only bad question is the one that doesn't get asked. Okay? Ask whatever it is you'd like to know. It'll help me to know what I need to put into this seminar when I give it to other people whom I'm going to charge like crazy. So please, for the next little while,
No, nothing.
next couple of minutes, I'm going to open this up sort of as a round table. In other words, a meeting of equals where everyone has equal say. But please try and make sure your questions can be heard. If you can think of anything, something about a situation you've had, something about whatever, because I think I have a holistically complete model for reasonable situations. I think I now can pretty much take in a question, process it, know a response that will resolve properly within the constraints of my model. Unrealistic things I can't help you with. One of the things that that one of your lady friends asked about was what if one of my multiple partners were to become infirm, right?
Yeah, it maybe get cancer.
All of us would be very concerned. All of us would go visit. All of my lovers tend to love each other. Sometimes it's a sexual love, sometimes it's a sororital love.
Let's say wheelchair bound, that's another example. In other words, what she's asking is, what expectation is there that
I would make sure her wheelchair was the right height, that she could easily fillet. Go on.
that somebody would be around to look after that person?
Okay,
when they need
your question is a very good one.
serious help.
Question is a very good one. In a few years, someone who lives with me in an open marriage that involves a lot of female participants and me and maybe some other guy, I don't know, will decide she has to leave. And she's going to make a claim for palimony, or actually for alimony, because by common law she'll have been married to each one of us, same-sex-wise and opposite-sex-wise. And the country is going to have to figure out what the legitimate legal obligations are, and can a person have multiple spouses? Spices, I say. Okay. To me, if I'm invested in a person emotionally, I'm invested in them emotionally. It doesn't matter what the law says, I don't give a crap about that. My reason for being with the people I'm with is because I treasure them. They're important to me. If a person were suddenly incapable of having sex, for whatever reason, or a lover, I'll give you an example, a lover of mine had a radical hysterectomy about 7, 8 years ago. She had a whole bunch of tumors, a whole bunch of cysts that were tumorous, fibroids and things, so she had to have a radical hysterectomy. And for about 2 years, she had no sexual urge at all. She couldn't get off, she wasn't enthusiastic about it, there was no sex drive at all, because all of her hormone systems had shut down. I still loved her, and I still spent lots of time with her, and I still hung out with her, and our relationship molded a little bit into more of a brother-sister relationship and less of a hot relationship. And that's what happens when you remove the sexual component from a relationship on long term. Now, when her sex drive came back, my sex drive for her came back because we were able to get rekindled. Is it something that made me happy, that I look forward to the next time that comes up? Of course not. Not a happy thing when a person loses that important part of their world. It's also not a happy thing when someone dies. Not a happy thing when a person has a bad situation, but you treat it the way you're going to treat it. It doesn't matter whether you're married to them, committed to them in some other way, or whatever. People leave each other because the positive suddenly is heavily outweighed by the negative, and they just don't feel that they need to sacrifice themselves anymore. For me, if I really care about the person and they're important to me, I'm going to stay in their life. But I can't tell you until something like that comes up how often I'm going to spend time with them or whichever. So please tell your friend, if a person becomes damaged or infirm, I'm going to treat them with as much love as I have for them. But if they've become a huge burden on my lifestyle, I'll deal with it. I'm not going to roll someone down a flight of stairs because they're in a wheelchair. People, if her attitude remains playful and happy, and I feel good about spending time with her, I will. I'll tell you an interesting thing. A friend of mine who had a major brain injury, which is what causes stroke, he pointed out something very important to me about positivity versus negativity. He said, you take someone whose life is overwhelmingly positive, who has a very positive outlook on life, and you give them a massive stroke and make them quadriplegic and put them in a wheelchair for the rest of their life. In a year, you have a happy, well-adjusted quadriplegic. Or you take someone who's fundamentally negative and hostile and upset with the world, and you give them $10 million in a lottery. And in a year, you have a miserable, poorly adjusted person with $9,500,000 left. So, since just about everyone I spend time with has a really positive outlook, I'm not worried about that situation taking place. It could, I hope not. Of course I hope not. But try to express that to your suite. I think what I'm saying pretty much sums it up.
I'm thinking of a scenario where, let's say, you become wheelchair bound.
Will I become wheelchair bound?
Yeah. Or somebody you care about, somebody like Violet. What will that do to the relationship? Is it over because there's no
No,
sex?
definitely no. No. Fantastic, fantastic one. No,
It's not about sex anymore, so a
no,
person
no.
needs care. They need care to caregiver.
it depends. If Violet had a massive stroke and didn't remember who she was, then our relationship would end, because the thing that makes Violet Violet to me is Violet's personality and her hot ass. No, it's the person she is. If she stopped being that person, I wouldn't abandon her. I would do my best to get her into a place where she would be well. But by the same token, I have a living will for myself. And if I find out I'm going to be in a vegetative state, I'm going to make sure that someone takes care of it in a final way. I've been through some pretty serious brain injuries of my own, and I'm not prepared to come back any worse off than I am
Well,
now.
you keep deflecting the question and changing
I-
the illness type to something different than
I'm sorry.
the question I'm posing.
If she were in a
You're
wheelchair, it would
perfectly
make
well,
no...
you're in a wheelchair.
If I'm in a wheelchair,
you
I
can still
would
have
not-
sex, but that person requires a lot of care.
Then they get a lot of care. Look, if they're in a good position in their brain, if they're sweet and helpful and wonderful, but they're having this bad luck, it wouldn't change anything for me. I don't need someone to line dance in order for me to find them sexy.
Yeah, my question, you got a lot of great things, and I'm just wondering, like, what do you find, like, I'm sure you've helped tons and tons and tons of guys out. What do you find makes the difference between a guy, like, really getting what you say, and a guy just getting lost in semantics and, like, having just more data for the word pile?
Okay. That's an excellent question. Part of the reason that I try to go over things a number of times is because a lot of things that I'm putting in are, as I described somewhere else, you can't rush how long it takes to put multiple coats of paint onto something. And so I'll try and explain things, and I'll hope that enough things resonate or start to crystallize after a while, stratify in a person's mind, that if they need to come back and ask me more, they will. That said, you can discuss it with the other people who are here, some of whom will have gotten it more quickly than others. There's nothing I can do about how quickly you're going to get something. I do my best to make sure through analogy and metaphor and simple descriptions and making these question and answer periods available, I give people the greatest chance of getting it. Some people aren't going to get it today, they'll get it tomorrow. Some people won't get it for weeks, and some people won't ever get it. And there's not a lot I can do about that. I try. I think when I was about 11 years old, I had been involved in a conversation at a religious school. A teacher had explained to me that we knew that the universe was created by God because otherwise the universe couldn't exist. And I said, all right, let me think about that. God created the universe, who created God? God didn't need to be created. God created himself. I said, okay. So I thought about it for a little while, and I thought, this is really screwing me up. This doesn't process for me. So I talked about it with another friend who said, ask yourself a question. What if the universe wasn't created at all? What if instead, just because everything you've ever seen in your world, everything you've ever thought of, has had a beginning, has a middle, and probably will have an end, just because everything you've ever wrapped your head around has had that model. What if the universe doesn't having it. And just because everything we've ever seen as people, short-lived as we are, did, we ascribe and assign to it that credit. And I thought about it, it didn't work for me. 6 hours later, it worked for me perfectly, and from that point on, I never ever had a problem with the notion the universe has always been here. I'm comfortable with that one much more than I am that God created himself and then the universe, which I was never comfortable with. When I told this to my religious studies teacher, he got very angry with me. And a couple of days later, he came to me and said, "What made you come to that answer?" And I told him that. And he said, "Well, you go tell your, whoever it was, that he's not doing you any favors." And from that point on, I decided I wasn't attending religious studies anymore. I've had debates with priest friends and religious friends. And after a little while, I've had people who really care about me stand up angry because my logic was sound and my conclusions inescapable, and shout that I had been sent by God to test their faith. What can I do about that? Okay? And so my answer is always the same. I'm not here to tell you what's right and wrong. I tell you what's right and wrong for me. I'll tell you how I recommend going about things. But follow your own happiness. Right? Anybody else?
I understand when you talk about how it is and how to get across to women about this
Comparing one? Oh,
this paradigm, but in practice it sounds a lot harder than it is. Like,
try it.
yeah.
When you understand this, when what I'm describing to you now, by the way, be very, very careful. This is extremely important, guys. Don't go up to girls and say, "Hey, every girl is either a slut or a whore." You'll get hit. Instead, say, I've been talking with some friends and we recognize something really important about the nature of the world. The paradigm under which we've all been living, the frame under which we've all been operating, has sabotaged us. It's made women treat themselves very badly. It's made them take on for themselves guilt which is unfounded. And the notion that a woman making choices for herself has no self-respect. And then explain the whole of it if necessary. And have a good time with it. Make them laugh. Get them to tell you the words slut and whore. Maybe they'll say tramp and prostitute. Doesn't make a difference. Go with what they say. And they'll realize that the truth is, they've been dealt a real hard hand, and it's been enforced by their mothers, and their mothers' mothers, and their grandmothers' mothers. Because it's very, very important to those contract prostitutes, those contract whores, it's very urgent that their situation be protected by removing competition from scabs, from unpaid workers who will walk through the picket lines. It's just the way things go. Now, of course, no girl wants to be called a scab any more than she wants to be called a slut, so you have to be careful with that one, too. But believe me when I say, you can sit down with someone, and it doesn't matter if she's got an IQ of 80 or an IQ of 160.
She's gonna get.
Speak clearly, know what you're saying, and all these things will resonate clear for her, even if she's a highly religious person. But if she's highly religious, she's going to give you a hard time about the whole notion of 10,000 years ago, people having sex and attributing the creation of babies to some mystical spirit that imbues women with babies. She's going to say, no, 4,000 years ago, God created us. Well, when you reach that point, you realize this is not someone you're going to be able to have that conversation with, and probably not someone you're going to be able to have a relationship with at all.
But you try anyway.
Yeah.
You know, there's a futility factor you have to figure in. When you realize that when you're pushing on a rope, give up. There's.
How do you handle the situation with a woman that believes in the whole fairy tale thing, romance, the great adventure, all that sort of stuff? And then you try to, you've made that connection with her. She's grown to understand that you understand her, and maybe that guy that could fill a lot of the fantasies and things that are going on in her head. Then all of a sudden you break that fantasy world for her by telling her that you want to sleep with other women, encourage her.
I'll come back to how I solved that. I tell her in the very first evening the 2 rules, which are that she has to have other lovers, because when I'm not with her, I'm going to be with other people. I tell her before she comes home.
The first 30-minute date?
Yeah.
And the second 30-minute date? The first night of
That sound about right?
Yeah.
Yes. Always.
I've never seen
You bring this up as one of the first things that you say to them on that date.
I need for them to understand that I'm not,
Usually within the first 5 minutes.
I'm not kidding. I tell them this so that there's no, look, if they want to find that romantic, wonderful Prince Charming, I'll help them find him. And I tell them that. It ain't gonna be me. I'm not there for that role. I'm not here casting for that role. You got this list of things you want? Cool, tell me all about it. Yeah, here's what I am. Let's go to bed. Cool. Take it or leave it. And I'll say without compunction, way, way, way more often they take it.
Okay, within the first 5 minutes then, frame that for me. Frame that into a conversation.
Sure. All right, what's your name?
I'm Susie.
Hi, Susie. Every time they... Have you ever noticed that every secretary on every movie's name is Susie? They always call for Susie. Must be rough. Tell me about yourself.
Well, I've been in this profession for years now. You know, it's hard to find a man that can really understand me. I'm very career-driven, career-oriented. So it's very difficult for me to find guys. I don't need a man to support me, to take care of me, any of that sort